Listen, the word of the day in this report came out to describe the descriptions was gratuitous, and I think that was right. There were cheap shots.
I found some of the language in the report a little bit gratuitous.
I think that this special counsel report was gratuitous.
This gratuitous language that he used.
Gratuitous language about his mental acuity.
A very gratuitous hypothetical about Biden's age.
And I think the word gratuitous is generous. There was so much unnecessary, inflammatory, and partisan kind of language that was used about President Biden in there.
There's a Justice Department tradition that you don't interfere with presidential elections. This seems like the height of interference. It's gratuitous.
Yes. Republicans making hay out of the gratuitous age comments in the report.
This is a little bit, in my view, beyond editorializing. It is gratuitous political hackery.
All of the other language. We use the word extraneous. We use the word gratuitous. But like I said, I think those are generous words. Those are just actually too nice to say. They were not supposed to be there.
Yes, you did.
And yet you said it because that's the memo. You need to use the word gratuitous. And they did.
They did.
There's no way everybody decided that was the word to describe it. She admitted it wasn't.
This is reminiscent of the 2000 campaign. I remember Rush Limbaugh had that montage of gravitas.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney is bringing gravitas, gravitas to the Bush ticket. And you know, that's Democrats, amazing. When you see that, I mean, they are obviously just in general devoid of independent thought.
Yeah.
And we can't stand them for that. But at the same time, we admire them because Republicans
together.
They could never, GOP talking heads could never move in lockstep like that to defend one of their own.
Because it's like herding cats when you're talking about doing the same thing with Republicans. They're not going to do it. Yeah. We're not going to do it.
And the Democrats are so they have no shame, so they don't even care if they end up in a montage embarrassing themselves.
And they don't think you're going to notice.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's going to point that out.
Right.
I mean, certainly not CNN. They're not going to show the gratuitous montage. That's amazing. It's really astounding when you see it put together like that.
Yeah.
Wow. So if you're like us and you didn't like the Senate bill that funded foreign wars while ignoring completely our own borders, not a penny for border security, Senator Ron Johnson explains how Senator Mitch McConnell threw Republicans and the country right under the bus.
Oh.
Here he is.
Just very simply, when we entered this thing, McConnell, his top priority was funding for Ukraine. But public opinion and the very strong political rhetoric that we ought to secure our own border before we spend $60 billion to secure Ukraine's was effective. And so McConnell finally switched and said, okay, we got to let Democrats know we're serious. We're going to defeat cloture on this bill, and we're going to demand that border security is going to be attached to funding for Ukraine. Then secret negotiations occurred on an issue that the public supports Republicans on, and we end up with this monstrosity of a bill. It's an immigration bill. It's not a border security bill. But during that time frame, we repeatedly talked about making Ukraine funding contingent on border metrics. You know, just like performance measurements in business, right? As the border was secured, you'd get $5 billion a month. I mean, we had it all laid out, had a proposal. It had a great deal of support in our conference. But what Mike pointed out is, unbeknownst to us at the time, McConnell told Langford, that's not even on the table.
Wow.
He on his own, using his own authority, without telling the conference, even though he knew the conference supported tying border security or Ukraine funding to actually securing the border, McConnell just took that off the table. And that moment of leverage we had, where we could use Biden's desire for Ukraine funding to actually force him to use his executive authority to secure the border, has been lost. And that is why so many of us are speaking out against McConnell. It was such a breach of his leadership position, and is such a just a horrible thing to do to Americans who want a secure border. But that's where we're at. So again, I think it has been smoked out. Now the action moves to the House.
I'll tell you something. We'll see. I find his criticism gratuitous. It's gratuitous.
I mean, Mike Lee's at the forefront of getting rid of McConnell now, right?
Yeah.
And just contrast that. We just had every Democrat talking head circle the wagons, read the memo, go out and defend Joe Biden, the indefensible, quite frankly. And we've got over in the Senate, we've got Republicans who are like, yeah, we know the public is totally on board with us on this border thing, but no, we're not going to be securing that, even though we have the greatest opportunity right now.